Mike Fallek
and Alan talking about movies. They may be best friends, but they always disagree.
Mike Fallek
And Alan, I seen that.
from Let's Start a Cult podcast.
Cool. And so you were on a few weeks ago. I'm glad to have you back. It was a lot of fun. We talked all the movies last time, but I think there's
literally every movie as I tweeted. I'm certain we talked about every single movie.
And we really got into Star Wars. Quite a bit. This is another franchise, not quite as good, but I think somewhat equally beloved. But this is Jurassic World.
So the entire Jurassic World itself, or are we just talking about that movie?
Well, the movie specifically, but we can talk about the whole franchise. The franchise is what's beloved. Mostly
I think the franchise
first movie.
is what's beloved.
Yeah,
that
the movie.
I don't know what you think of Jurassic World, but I am not a fan. I would love to hear what you think.
I hate this movie. I actually rewatched
it's a
it.
Dog movie.
I rewatched it this morning because I was like, I remembered you had mentioned in one of the podcasts we did before about how you had tons of stuff to say about this. So I was like, oh, we should talk about that. I could not remember any of the beats of the movie. So I decided, well, let's rewatch it so I can get caught back up. Still don't remember anything about this movie. Like I literally
It's very unmemorable. And that's a problem with Star Wars too, and it's a problem with like these people taking these Lucas and Spielberg entities. I think it's like you've nailed it on the head. Is these people take these Lucas and Spielberg entities, which like these characters live with these guys for so long, so they're very memorable, but then people just want to kind of make Jurassic-y stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They don't have an iconic moment in mind that they haven't lived with it for so long. Essentially, the way these things work is like someone, you work for a studio and someone's just like, hey, want to make Jurassic Park? And these dudes write it in like 6 months, as opposed to like that movie took 20 years to write. That guy was living with that movie for so many years. Same with, Star Wars. He's been writing that for years. And I don't remember. I sent out a tweet a few weeks ago, not to take over here, but I really like this point. Is like, I sent out a tweet a couple years ago. It was like, oh man, remember in episode 7 of Star Wars when that guy said, wait, what did anyone say? Cause there's no good like lines in that movie. It's just Star Wars for 3 unbearable hours.
Yeah. Well, that's what Jurassic World is. It's hit. Yeah. They use the same music and they use the same visuals to try to cheat emotion out of people instead of actually earning it.
But they don't even. Okay, let's talk about the music for a second.
Yeah.
That I don't want to do the theme because I don't want to. Maybe I could do like a note. It's parody. I guess it's also we're talking about the movie itself, so I have to talk about it. That very typical when they see the island in the first movie, They use it. It's like the theme. It's that ba-da-da, and if you watch that movie, watch when all we were doing the whole day was like making fun of when they use that cue.
Yes.
And like the spotting on that movie is terrible. They're like, I think the first time you hear that movie is like when you see their house in the suburbs and it's like, and so all day, me and my friends after we saw it, we would like hold up like a piece of salt, like a piece of bread and be like, because it was so bad. They didn't even, you could have waited until we saw that theme park and just like, blasted us with that music, come in with full decibels, but they didn't, nothing happens with the music. It was not good.
Well, they keep re-hitting it, like you were saying. They do it over and over to where it doesn't have an impact. Like if they would have saved it for the final moment of the movie, it could have been really powerful, but they just kept hitting it.
They did it at the weirdest times too. It was almost like the composer was like running at it and he was like, oh, what do we have? Oh, throw that in there while they're waiting online for the bathroom. It was ridiculous.
It was really bad. Do you remember anything about this movie? Is there anything that you liked about it?
All right, wait. Let's see, because now I'm seeing if I can actually go through the points of the movie.
Yeah.
They go to the island, and then they go to the island.
Yes.
That's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
And
so
like,
the kids,
here's what
the kids go to visit their aunt because their parents are getting divorced, maybe, but there's no, that is an emotional cheat
Okay,
as well.
let's talk about that emotional cheat for a second, because they really could have, amped up that sort of thing. They really, cause in like, there is no moment we get to enjoy it. Like, or no hard line is, alright, I'll give you an example. I was just talking about E.T. with my mother of all people. And I told her when I saw that movie as a young boy, I never thought E.T. was real. Cause I was like, no, these kids are going through this divorce and they're making up E.T. This isn't a real thing happening. But the reason that you think that is because we don't really see the thing. We get a few hints of it. We get a few hints of this divorce stuff, they're not really getting divorced in E.T. There's marital strife.
Yeah.
It's not full, but you get hints of it, and then you're like, oh. And it feels like these kids are covering something up with their minds. It feels that way. Why it was horseshit in this movie was because they were kind of like, they might as well have gone, bum, bum, bum. Because they were like,
yeah.
What's her name comes out. She's like, we're getting divorced. She's like, enjoy the dinosaurs. And then they're on that island, and then they kind of keep teasing it. What I wanted was just do full on Kramer versus Kramer every time we see the parents. And they're like, fuck you, like, you go to hell, like, and they're yelling, and there's like the monsters on the inside and the monsters on the outside. But instead the parents are just kind of sitting around. Like, it would be great if they didn't know their kids were in danger, because they were yelling so much, like they're just fighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they didn't know that they're in the monsters on the inside and the monsters on the outside.
Yeah. I was thinking it would have been good if the parents would have gone to the island and their marital issues had been a factor in them trying to survive. Cause they were back home. They sent their kids away to get a divorce. They needed time, like, to figure it out with the lawyers. But if the parents would have gone to the island, then it could have been, having this fight when they're trying to survive and just bickering. Like, they could have used that as something. And then another thing that this movie doesn't do that the original did was that in the original, they established the characters and then you lost the characters. Some of the characters died. The main guys all survived.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Were there any personalities in this movie? I'm confused. I was not under the impression there was a single personality trait in this entire movie.
There was cardboard cutouts of people that they pushed around on hoverboards.
Even
I think
Chris Pratt, who you can kind of just steal his personality from everything else he's done. You did kind of typecast him as Star-Lord, right? He's essentially a dinosaur Star-Lord. You don't think he's going to be able to. They didn't even steal any jokes, man.
No. Yeah, he was.
And isn't it the same guys? Can't they just blatantly steal? Couldn't it? It's right. It's the same studio, isn't it?
I don't know who did Jurassic World. Let me see.
I think it's all Disney now, isn't it? Or is it Universal?
I think it's Universal.
Oh, so maybe that's why they can't blatantly steal the jokes.
But I feel like his essence is what he's like, because in Parks and Rec, in Guardians.
Oh yeah, wait, Universal is Parks and Rec. They could have just stolen that character.
He should
literally just could have put an Andy there.
It would have made it a lot better. I kind of have an issue with Chris Pratt because he plays the same character in all his movies, but this was the opposite. This was so bad. This was just...
I've never seen what people seem to say is his, major acting role and sort of got him Star-Lord, which was to show that he could do both sides of it. I've never seen he played, I think Zero Dark 30.
Zero Dark 30, yeah. But he wasn't
Is he in that, or is he, I don't know if that's the actual movie.
His muscles were in that. That was about it. Yeah. He got pretty big for that role. Or I guess small and big. He put on a lot of muscle, but he doesn't really act in it.
Yeah, but I've never seen that one, so I can't say he's always the same person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he was so bad in this,
yes.
and the movie set up like a great movie, which was like, okay, this is all about 90s nostalgia. I mean, the preview set up a great movie. They were like, this is all about 90s nostalgia. You love Chris Pratt. You loved how the the whatchamacallit, the Raptors were super smart. It's it's gonna be Chris Pratt versus the dinosaurs on his motorcycle. He's gonna be, it's a dirt bike movie. Why, I don't know why they didn't make just a dirt bike movie.
Yes.
You know, in the end, nothing happened with the Raptors. They just kind of did some stuff, and then literally the Raptors disappear. They're like, release the hound, Smithers, and then there's no Raptors, and then the Raptors show up and save the day, which was, if you actually think about the beats of the movie, that is the only beat of the movie is, here's a dinosaur, now it's gone, it's gonna come back at an unexpected moment and do a thing.
Yeah.
That's the only beat of the entire movie.
Yeah, this movie is awful. It's really bad.
All right, we'll get into Michael's main horrible point of the movie.
All right.
The whole, and I know that sometimes this show can be not explicit, sometimes it's going to be explicit. I have to swear. The whole movie, they are just like, wow, look at that white dinosaur, and the dinosaur is never white once. The entire movie, they're like, wow, that T-Rex is so white. And like, it's a CGI, it's like the biggest budget CGI flub in the history of CGI flubs. Because the whole movie, they're like, look at that white dinosaur. And then you look at the dinosaur and you're like, it's not even slightly white, like it's barely a light brown. And then they screwed up again because clearly everybody else that was around the movie, except for the CGI people, was like, what a spooky dinosaur. We're going to have all the toys are going to be that. Like the Lego people were like, yeah, we'll make the Lego dinosaur, the game, we'll make him super white. And there's photoreal, as much as you can get photoreal to a dinosaur. I know that sounds insane, but there's, really crazy, hyper detailed toys of this dinosaur white. And so the only people, and I don't know why, no one, when they talk about this movie, I talk to every single person about this movie, I'm like, it wasn't white. Like, why is no one going back? And these are the kings of, this is ILM, they're the kings of, go back and fix the movie, let's add more Gungans to this And like, I don't know why someone wasn't like, yo, this dinosaur isn't white. Because again, this movie was set up to be super spooky. Like, that's a really spooky dinosaur. Like, this dinosaur that is white and albino, and like by all accounts it's albino, so it should be like, targeted. It should be the, if you don't know evolutionarily wise, albinos are sort of meant to die. So there's a great theme there that albinos are easy prey. People think that they're sort of evolution, they're like an evolutionary one-up for the rest of the species, that if you have an albino, other animals will pick that one off. And then someone blatantly screws it up and is like, oh, but it has camouflage. It's like, no, it would have been a great statement to say like, no, these things are albinos, the most powerful dinosaur we can generate. It's an albino. It's meant to be killed. It's meant to be taken out. It's gonna die. And then instead, not to say that people who are humans are albinos are meant to die, but when you talk about lizards living in the woods, they're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And so there's an evolutionary commentary here, even with albino people. It would have been great to have an albino actor in the movie, to make some statement about, this evolutionary thing. That's why it's sci-fi. I got in a big fight on my podcast, on the last episode actually, where, you're now a sort of contributing guest to our show, to Let's Start a Cult. And right before it, I said, there's sci-fi, you have to take a science concept and play with it. And it would have been great to play. Nobody talks about albino people. They're sort of pushed to the side, and albino, animals in the breeding world are treated like crap. They're, in the pet trade, they're, especially in the reptile pet trade, these albino snakes, they're meant to breed over and over and over again because people want them. They want these red eyes and things. There were so many science and social issues to play with an albino dinosaur that were relevant. The pet trade, the idea of you're genetically making these things, you're creating broken genetic things. There was so much there, and they just were like, not only they didn't miss it, it wasn't like me being upset and being like, oh, you missed the chance. They blatantly, like, they made choices that were like, oh, we don't understand it. Like, we just literally don't understand.
Yeah,
what we're supposed to do with it.
Now that you say that, I remember them saying something about the dinosaur being white, but I just completely glossed over it. I mean, I was kind of brain dead watching this movie. I think that might be what they expected. But now that you mention it, that they did, I remember them saying it. And that's
they say it a bunch.
Weird choice to leave just to, yeah, that's crazy.
If you're listening to this podcast, you have a phone probably or a computer in front of you. Go type in Jurassic World dinosaur toy, and that Megalorex or whatever it's called. What's it called?
Indominus Rex.
Indominus Rex.
I think that's what it was. Something like that.
It sounds like one of the names. Remember when Homer gets a new name in The Simpsons? It sounds like one of the fake new names he was going to choose. Was it remember, he was Max Powers.
Max Powers, yeah.
Indominus Rex sounds like another name he would have wanted. It's so stupid. But they keep saying, like, there's points where people are looking at it like, look at how white it is. But if you go look up the toy for the Indominus Rex, it's super duper albino, and it's really spooky. You know, it would have been like a takeoff of Voldemort. I was actually really excited when they're like, it's white, and then we got a good look at it, and I was like, oh, it's not white.
Yeah.
It's so weird. And that's the thing I always ask people about bad sci-fi is like, what scientific concept are you playing with? And that's what excites me about sci-fi. The fight we got on the episode of Let's Start a Cult was, I was like, a boy gets a magic sword from an old wizard in a robe with powers. That is fantasy. There's no science concept we're playing with there. You know, there was a lot to do in this. There was a lot of points to be made. You know, the first Jurassic Park is a big, it's one of the few sci-fis at the time that's kind of saying, you know, hey, we've just learned about the genetic code. Like, maybe this isn't something to mess with. You know, it's making a real question towards real science. People might not remember, but when those movies were coming out, you know, we were cloning things.
Yeah.
And we were cloning animals, and there was this real debate of like we were back in the age of Frankenstein again, where people were saying, like, you know, if you don't know what the message of Frankenstein is there were people when surgery first came out that were against surgery. And doctors would have to buy criminals illegally because people were like, no, it's anti the will of God to open someone up and cut them open. And now, I mean, that's even any religious person would go, yeah, of course surgery isn't against the will of God, but that was what was going on. And, you know, cloning is still a weird issue. Between anyone with any ethics is like, I don't really know if we're cloning things and messing with genetics. Like, it was a real issue at the time, and they just took no stance on anything. And I really felt as though when they were talking about I really thought they were going to do a pet trade thing. They didn't do anything with evolution, and it was what scientific concept are we playing with in that movie is my whole point.
Well, this movie is about consumerism. It's all about the selling, it's all about the advertisements, and that's what their whole message was, but it felt so weak because they were doing the exact same thing to make this movie that they were trying to talk about. So they're they're pointing out Jimmy Buffett's whatever his restaurant was, and Starbucks being on there, and then naming the Indominus Rex's cage after something. But they were getting
Verizon. It was named after Verizon.
They were getting money to make this movie from those. Like, it was just, it just felt like it so missed the mark. And it was.
So sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say it's coming. I want to say it came out a few years after Blackfish. And so, I don't know, did you ever see Blackfish, the documentary?
Yes, but that was what I was going to say is like, they didn't do, they also really made this big deal about this thing in the tank. And they didn't do anything with Blackfish either.
Yeah, and so it was like, I feel like they're saying like, you guys, people now, go to SeaWorld and enjoy looking at these animals, but think about what you're doing. These are real animals. These are not human. They're, living creatures that have feelings and thoughts and whatever. But it's like, I feel like everyone was already kind of on that page. Like, it was like,
but here's the big issue with that. Here's my big issue with that is that's how the movie should start.
Yes.
The movie should, because I don't know if you guys noticed, at the end of that movie, like, dinosaurs are just loose in the world.
Yes.
So the movie should have started with that point. The movie should have started with, like, we're at the island and, like, okay, and here's this giant alligator and all these things. And the movie just starts with, it should have been like, I've never read World War Z, but, I have friends that are big fans of it. It should have just been like how World War Z, the book, was written. And like, it starts with these animals just breaking out, and it's all about dinosaurs communing with the world. Cause in the end, the whole plot you're watching, right, like the whole thing is what you're saying, Alan, that like, you know, you shouldn't be doing these things, you shouldn't be caging them. So in the end, if that's their point, the entire plot with Chris Pratt and the kids and all those things is a big fuck you to the viewer, because it's like, oh, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're all gonna escape. It doesn't matter. The whole story you're watching is stupid.
Yeah, that's basically, that's the feeling I got when I finished watching this movie.
The whole plot's useless. So if you wanted to make a movie that mattered, we should have had like lots of little plots of like, cause now there's just dinosaurs, cause now the next movie is much better. That's a great movie where it's just like, there are dinosaurs in the world.
Well,
like,
they're making another one. I don't know if you know.
Of course they are, because fuck you, you know?
My question is,
what's your question? You only have one? I have lots.
Jurassic Park, the original, came out now, same script, updated graphics, but everything was the same other than that, right? Would it be as popular as it was back then? Because it was kind of it took off because it was so amazing. Because it was so, it's kind of like Avatar, right? It was so technologically advanced.
Well, Avatar, we can talk about Avatar. Avatar is very technologically advanced, but
it's an awful movie. It's terrible.
Well, I don't know if I'll record this for posterity's sake. When Avatar came out, first of all, if you don't know this, companies, when they release the budget of the movies versus how much the movie makes, they only talk about pre-production, production, and post-production versus the box office. So what you've noticed is missing from that is advertising.
Yes.
And I suspect that Avatar actually for the studio made no money because it was rumored that they spent equal, if not more, on their advertising. And if you weren't alive or remember when Avatar was coming out, you literally couldn't go anywhere. It wasn't like, oh my God, everyone's talking about it. No, you literally could not watch TV. You literally couldn't go on the internet. You literally couldn't walk around without seeing an advertisement for this movie. Not a day went by in your life that you were in America, I'm talking about, that you did not walk around and you weren't like, yeah, no, Avatar's coming out. Like for months and months and months, more than any other movie at the time. Or in recent memory, to be honest, like, I didn't see as many advertisements for Star Wars even.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that movie made any money, but everybody had to see it because it was like, oh my gosh, shut up. Just shut up, I'll go. God. How many times do I have to see it for you to stop telling me?
Well, it was
horrible.
It was an event, you know. It was like everyone was going to see it in IMAX because that was the only way you could see it. And there wasn't really movies around that time that were like, you have to see this in IMAX.
Well, and in 3D. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
For most people, it was their first time seeing the new version of Real D, Disney's Real D, which is now sort of standard. Everyone uses Real D. But I had seen Bolt, a not so remembered, John Travolta CGI movie, which was pretty good. But he played a dog, and Bolt was in Real D.
Bolt. Yeah.
And I also had seen Coraline in 3D, but Bolt came out before Coraline. So Bolt was my first exposure to Real D. And then I saw Coraline, and then I saw Avatar. So I was sort of over Real D at that point.
Yeah.
I think I'd even seen another, like an IMAX, like a nature movie. They had converted one of some aquarium. They'd converted a movie. So I think I'd seen a bunch in Real D before Avatar.
I don't think it makes any movies better. I think it's the inconvenience
did you see
of wearing the goggles and the headache. At least I get a headache.
I
every
get a
time.
headache from it too.
It's
yeah,
never worth it.
Do you wear glasses normally?
I'm supposed to.
You're supposed. See, that's interesting because I don't wear glasses, and I've been told that might be why I get a headache. But if you're supposed to wear glasses and you also get a headache,
Well, I don't.
I guess
wear
if you
glasses.
don't,
Yeah.
well, there you go. Interestingly, I don't like Real D, but one of the few Real D movies I really wanted to see was, people might not remember this, was that Jurassic Park had came out a few months before Jurassic World in Real D in select theaters.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I saw some of the Star Wars again, and then they stopped doing them because the Star Wars weren't making money. That's how unpopular 3D is, everyone. Star Wars was in theaters, and not enough people saw Star Wars because of 3D. But what they did, which was really cool, was they didn't just convert it like they do with a lot of movies. They took the time to cut out certain characters and bring them to the foreground. And it was actually really an interesting movie to see in Real D. I loved it. I thought it was really, seeing it on a big screen. It was, I do think that movie would be just as popular. I don't think you need to update the graphics. I think kids, if they just saw it, they would love it. I think it's a timeless idea.
Well, I think you're right. I think it's because it's scary, right? Like you are genuinely afraid for the characters at a few different times because you don't know what's going to happen. In Jurassic World, I was like, oh, no one's in danger. No one is going to die. Everyone who you start out with the movie is going to survive because they put cannon fodder next to them in any scene that's dangerous. They're like, oh,
red shirts, as we call them in the world of sci-fi.
Yeah. And so it's just
a lot of red shirts.
Every time you see, like when Chris Pratt walks into the cage, you have the two guards in with him. It's like, okay, well, he's going to be fine.
Those guys are done.
And, I don't know if you remember this part, but Chris Pratt gets under the car at one point and covers himself in gasoline to hide his scent from the dinosaur, which I thought was a good idea. I wish they would have used it later and set him on fire. I thought that
it would have been great if right at the end of the movie, just boom!
They just use it.
Well, of course, it was, I don't want to, it's really hard to light yourself on fire if you cover yourself in gasoline. I really don't want to say that to people. But essentially, gasoline as a liquid doesn't burn. So, you have to kind of pour yourself, this is so horrible that I'm even saying this to people. Don't do any of this. But essentially, if you've ever seen that famous footage of that person, that monk lighting himself on fire, he does it pretty quick. Like, he pours gas and then he lights himself on fire. And that's what's very shocking about that footage. But that really is how you have to do it. You can't, gasoline and alcohol as well are very, they evaporate. And so when you light those substances on fire, what you're actually burning is the vapor right above the liquid. That's why we can liquid inject engines.
Yeah.
So it coats the engine, and then what you're lighting on fire is this vapor. So if you cover yourself in gasoline, like a few minutes later, you're just not going to be covered in gasoline. Like, it's all just going to go away. So it's really hard to light yourself on fire, especially like go into your bathroom right now and put some rubbing alcohol in your arm, and watch it evaporate real quickly. Like, it doesn't stay there for that long. So it wasn't as much of a device. But don't play with gas. Don't play with gasoline ever. Oil. If you have crude oil, you're at more risk, quite honestly, with Vaseline. For a few hours.
I just wish they would have.
People don't risk anything anymore. But before you say your point, that's a huge issue. Is nobody's willing to. Same with the Avengers and stuff. It's like someone's got to die. Someone important has to die. Or at least be rough with them. I really want to see someone be in danger, and they don't. I rewatched all the Spider-Mans recently, and I was like, man, the Tobey Maguire ones, it's like they beat him up.
Yeah.
Like, they just drop him from buildings, and they really throw that guy around, and you feel it.
Well, you can kill a character and keep them alive, right? Like, you not like bring them back to life, but you can kill who they are inside. You can have these things destroy the person and, see the effects. In this movie, people are getting chewed up and, just terrorized by these dinosaurs, and none of the characters seem to be affected by it emotionally.
I really liked we can go, hold on, I'm going to get totally off track,
no
but, to play on the things we were saying before, if it's, oh, you know what? This is all nonsense. I'm going to go on the thread you're talking about. I'll remember this concept at the end to wrap it up, I guess. But on that concept of them being terrorized and nothing really, happening to them, like, I really like the Hunger Games books and the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, the movies are bad, but I really like the books. And one of the reasons is because they at least injure them. My favorite scene, when I tell people about those books, they're like, that's not what the books are. And I'm like, yeah, go read the books. Cause it was Pulp Fiction, man. It was really, there's this great scene where Katniss there's these traps, and like, in the movies, they seem to make it seem like, okay, she's just so good at this that the traps don't really affect her, but she's not. In the books, there's this great scene where she's like, they can just put traps anywhere, and you don't know how scary that is. And she gets in this forest, and all the trees shoot fire. And there is a scene where Katniss is being lit on fire, and she's like sitting and like grabbing her blistering arms and puking. Like literally puking, and then running and like has to stop and like vomit and throw up from the pain, and is like can't touch stuff because she's on like fire and like dodging out of the way, and like her skin is peeling and she's puking. It's like, yeah, you're right. The character can like let someone get nashed. Like no one even gets injured.
No. Yeah, no one is ever, they're dirty and they have a few scuffs. That's about it. Like my kids get hurt more playing outside than any of the characters being chased by dinosaurs in this movie. At least the main characters.
Yeah, right. It's either I got a skin knee, and they don't even do that. Like if someone gets a skin knee, like at least like, doesn't the kid have one of the brother has a hobble at one point? But
Yeah, I think he
really
scrapes his chin. There's like a comment like, oh, what happened there? And that was it. And it's like, okay, this is, but go like back to
here's my what I skipped before when I was babbling incoherently. One of the reasons that the original works is, and the reason again why I don't think this movie is good, it's not good, is because they're not playing with anything. If it's about SeaWorld, well then let's have the animals get loose in Act 2. At the start of Act 2. At the end of Act 1, the end of Act 1 should be all the animals are loose.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like add a show. Or if it's about the animals needing to be free, well then it should be these animals are just in lakes and stuff, and they're at people's pools and they're living, like that should be the end of Act 1.
Yeah.
If it's about consumerism, then it needs to be like a They Live kind of story, or you know what I mean? It needs to be like about the evils of consumerism and people buying things and like these, and it's about, it should be about people just wanting to buy stuff, and these poor, majestic animals, like as mascots in petting zoos and things like that. Like it should be cruel, and there should be a point to it. If it's about albinoism, it should be about albinoism. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
we should play with any of those concepts.
Well, it's kind of,
and
they're kind of cold reading, like what a psychic does, where they just throw out a bunch of stuff. And so they're like trying to hit on all these
Is
different
it about
points.
this?
And
it's like a bad English paper. You're right.
Yeah. And they don't close anything. So people who don't think about what they're watching, they're like, oh, this resonated with me because I care about this issue, whether it's SeaWorld or, consumerism, whatever it is. But they don't realize like, oh no, they never resolved that. It just, they opened that wound and just let it fester and never did anything with it.
It's classic. The filmmakers that are that classic Woody Allen thing, where the person's talking and the other filmmaker comes up and goes, you know nothing of my works. And then he did it again in, A Midnight in Paris, where the authors are telling you, no, you're wrong about my works. You don't understand it. And they're right. They never actually play with it. And the reason that I think, Jurassic Park is a scary movie is because they set up something which is so terrifying, which is what that movie is really about is there's this genetic statement. There's two sort of very big statements. There's the genetic statement, which we're playing with the whole time, which is the sci-fi element. But the horror element, which is why it works so well, is what if an amusement park ride goes wrong? And so the reason those scenes work is I remember the scariest moment has no dinosaurs in it. It's when they decide they're going to drive the track cars at the beginning of Jurassic Park on their own. And the track cars don't work. And all it is a tour through the forest. And the track cars stop working. Everyone that watches that movie is like, oh my God, a car on a track, like this casual tour thing isn't working. Like your heart just starts going like, da-dunk, da-dunk, da-dunk. Cause you like, even something going wrong at like a Disney World or, these like lame rides or be at Disney World, your heart starts being like, I never thought that amusement park rides don't work. Like that's the horror. They're off the track that a roller coaster could break.
Yeah. Yeah. The first one is so much better than Jurassic World. And
then the other two, I only give a pass because of the effects, just because essentially it was ILM and Steven Spielberg being like, all right, let's make some dope dinosaurs. Like those other movies are okay, but they're much better than this.
I get the other two jumbled together. Which one?
Me too.
The third one, I think, ends with the T-Rex in Los Angeles, right?
Are you asking? I have no idea.
Or is it the second? I can't remember. Cause they have a new dinosaur in the third one that's got like Vince Vaughn in it, who's the it doesn't matter.
Yes. Oh my, he was great in that.
The other two, they're, I think I saw them like once when I was a kid. Like that, it's pretty bad if, when you're a kid, you don't even want to rewatch it.
Well, those were in those era too of like really movies that you couldn't afford, right? Like they were, all three of those are VHS. And then I think eventually they get their, early ages of DVD. So you really had to like a movie to get it.
Yeah.
And, I was explaining, this is all about my family. I was telling my brother, like, no, there were $75 VHSs. Like, you couldn't afford VHS.
Yeah.
Like, they were never as cheap as movies are cheaper now than they've ever been. Even like week one, like, the movies are $30 for the special edition week one. It's like, man, that's nothing. That's the cheapest anything has ever been.
Yeah.
That was such a bad movie.
But Jurassic Park. So getting back to that, the first one, they established, what was it, like 10 characters on the island? Like you got Samuel L. Jackson, you got, the guy
they were very unique
Seinfeld.
characters too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the only sort of trope. You
Yes.
know what I mean? He's an archetype. He's the fat sort of gluttonous technology kind of guy who abuses his power. He's worm tongue from, from Lord of the Rings. He is a classic, he's the fat king. He's the person with all the power, the second in command that's gonna abuse, he's the corrupt cop. He's the cop eating the hot dog from Batman. He's a classic, character. He has a lot of power and he's going to abuse it. But like Samuel Jackson's character is this very kind of, that was right off of Hackers, like, that he was going to be this cool coder and the millionaire who had all the money, who was like really into science and wanted to that was a new character. Jeff Goldblum, was this sort of, hippie scientist. We hadn't really seen someone like that in a movie done well, that he was, very much a Terrence McKenna kind of character. He was this, who's the other one? Who did the original Cosmos?
I don't know.
What's his name? But like Neil deGrasse Tyson, but the other guy that came first and did all those things. He was a cool scientist, and then the paleontologist, like, you were right. They not only established characters, but these were like weird characters we'd never seen seen before.
Yeah.
We knew them. You knew them instantly. You knew exactly what they were going to do instantly. You knew that the paleontologists are not going to leave the sick dinosaur, and you knew Jeff Goldblum was going to propose philosophical problems with everything and try and see things from a point of view that, like, you knew them right away.
Yeah. Well, even Jeff Goldblum, he gets hurt. His leg gets all torn up, and he gets that part of his conflict is he can't move. You know, he's stuck in the back of the truck. Then you have the lawyer who freaks out and abandons kids to die and ends up dying himself. You know, like you have these moments that I can vividly remember how people died in that movie. In this Jurassic World, I seriously finished it an hour and a half ago. I can hardly tell you how any people died in it.
Well, I'll say this. If you haven't seen Pacific Rim, that was the real movie. Yeah, that movie came out, like, I think that year, or the year right after. And that was really the movie to see. And why that movie is amazing is because Guillermo del Toro and all good monster movie people appreciate, which is what Jurassic Park is supposed to be, a monster movie, is that once you invoke the word monster, you're really supposed to, all of that goes back to the biblical story of the Leviathan.
Mm.
And since the Leviathan, filmmakers all across the world have said, what is the monster meant to teach us? That this attack, that it's very pointed, that, like, the word monster has become this adjective. It's become a thing. That what is the monster? Either that you are battling, or that it's like, why have you been attacked this way? That there should be a symbolism to the deaths that a monster causes. That
yes.
the problem, and that is why, Pacific Rim, which is an homage to monster movies, is still very much hits at home, because everyone's interaction with these monsters is supposed to be, like, to your core, literally with the Leviathan in the core of what is at the core of the monster. And so when any interaction you have with a monster should not be casual. It should be very much symbolic. And that's why you can remember who gets it and who doesn't get it in those movies, because it's a morality tale anytime you have a monster on screen. It's not just, and then the monster does stuff,
Yeah. Well, the Indominus Rex was just convenient. Anything they needed him to do, he could just do. It was like, oh, he's invisible, or he can hide his, like, they never established things before it happened. It happened, and then it was like, okay, well, he can do that clearly. And there's just no real good story structure to this movie. There's no foreshadowing going on. It's part of the
right,
issue.
You're even grasping for some storytelling, where you're like, there's no foreshadowing. There's no, it's like there's, I don't know what else. There's no mise en place. It's like, dude, there's just nothing. You're right. They don't care. They don't, it was a studio. I mean, I've talked to the last time I was on the show about Lechner's Law. The story of the movie is the story of its making. And you totally hit it on the head that it was a conglomerated, that this was the result of money and conglomerated BS. And of course, obviously, that was this movie too, was that they didn't know what it was. It was made through money.
Well, a big part of the issue with movies now is the international market. Living here in Thailand and having seen movies in other languages and dubbed over in other languages and stuff like that, you can, not understanding the original intent, not understanding the original language, you can infer as the viewer so much more to it than what's actually happening. So I think if you don't speak English and you go and see this movie and you're kind of confused because you're not understanding what's happening, I think it's a lot more exciting.
Yeah, that's the subbed versus dubbed argument, isn't it? Because the famous example that I always talk about is Goku. Of course, Dragon Ball Z, first Bruce Lee did it first, and then there was a lull for a while in getting Asian films into America. Mm-hmm. And Dragon Ball Z is what made Japan, other than America, the real heavy hitter in terms of international, movies is that other countries kind of, they take American TV and they take Japanese TV and then they make that's their TV. That's why you don't see, I mean, that's how you can fill your television networks when you're in other countries. And now Spain is, of course, Spanish language stuff is now moving its way up, but, Mexico and Spain are sort of doing that, but really it's America and Japan. And if it was not for the dubbing of Dragon Ball Z, we really wouldn't have had that. And when you watch the original Japanese version, there's a very pointed joke in that Goku's voice is very childish.
Yes.
And it's a joke voice. There is a gag every time you watch. It's not taking itself too seriously. There's sort of a gag in believing like, oh my God, this massive beast of a man, not even a man, this Superman has this ridiculous voice and it's lost in this country. But of course, the argument is we wouldn't have liked that joke.
Yeah.
We don't get that type of Japanese humor. And so of course, forever that's kind of lost to the American public, but at what cost? Because, of course, now I would not know about Americans as much as people want to argue for subtitling in the way you're saying, like you can enjoy films a little bit better when they're in their native sort of tongue. It's like, well, but are we really getting it? Would you watch it? And other countries have to.
Yeah.
Other countries have to.
Well, that's what I mean
is
I think the filmmaking is getting lazier because if your biggest market is not gonna hear the original intent, you get bonus points from that already.
I was lucky enough, this year to have one of my films, which is really a video art film. It's a stop motion video art film, get picked up by a Chinese company. And that was a huge honor to me because, Chinese filmmakers very much are against what happened with Japan and are against that whole thing with what you're saying. And the Chinese government itself only lets in 50, foreign films a year, most of which are American, of course, they get the big titles. But so and you get better breaks. And so for me, the idea really was, essentially a company in China was like, we love the visuals of this enough to bring it in. It was sort of an honor. It was sort of a notch on my belt to say that someone in China wanted to, bring my work to the Chinese people. Cause essentially all they were saying was, wow, the visuals of this are beautiful because mostly it's very, English wordplay humor.
Yeah.
So I knew they weren't really enjoying that element of it. So it was really them loving the visuals, and that was kind of an honor to me. And, because the other way of it, these studios don't realize that honor. They don't feel that anymore. No. Other countries have to. Everyone wants to see Jurassic Park. So even if you're a country with a lot of pride in your own native artists, you kind of have to bow your head and pay the check because you're like, okay, we're not going to deny our people Jurassic Park. Okay, give us Jurassic Park, but God forbid this movie was set in an Asian country. You know what I mean? They always fly out to the middle of nowhere. God forbid you put an Asian person on camera. They're clearly either in the Caribbean or an Asian island.
I think they said South America, but.
Oh, South America. Yeah, well, God forbid anyone speaks Spanish on screen. I would never want that. I would never want the American public, a quarter of us speak Spanish. I would never want us to hear Spanish. God forbid. Or a Latin lead. Could you imagine? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's all pandering. It's these movies, these franchises kind of have won. People are gonna see their movie almost regardless at this point. Like, Star Wars doesn't seem like it can really do anything wrong. Jurassic Park is gonna live on. Marvel is gonna live on. People can just make crappy movies and people will forgive them because they have this nostalgia of what they used to love.
I'll close this with a drunken thing about, I'm not drunk right now, but a drunken thing about Star Wars. On Halloween, I was leaving a bar towards the end of the night. So this was at the height of it. And someone was, I had gone into it. This is very unlike me, but I had gone into a bar where a very chic kind of Halloween party started to happen around me. And so I got to leave at the end of our night feeling very like hip because I left this place, and there was a line to get in. And I was like, oh, this was not the bar I went into initially. And so I got to feel very cool.
Yeah.
But I left and then I left my bag inside. So I left and someone was dressed as a stormtrooper and he was with someone else. And I was like, I need to see the identification for these droids. And the guy was like, I kind of looked at him being like, just say the line. He was like, oh, these are not the droids you're looking for. And then I went back in to get my bag and came out and started to talk to him again. And then we started talking about it. And I said, there's no reason in that movie, in the first movie, where every droid they see, this is my version of that movie, is that every droid they see, they don't just shoot that droid in the head.
Yeah.
Cause that would have been my movie, is like, there's people pulling up with droids and they just blast every single droid they see. And that's how evil the Empire felt at the time. And I got really upset about Rogue One because I was like, they don't really do anything that evil. And like, we don't seem to be calling these movies on these things. And then it's hard to not sound like the same people that made fun of Phantom Menace and things like that. Cause Phantom Menace wasn't that bad. Those people were just upset that they weren't kids anymore. But like, this movie really didn't do anything. Like, it just didn't make any choices. It was just bland. And it was just kind of like, I don't know why you're killing. I don't know why we're on sides here. I don't really feel it, you know?
Yeah.
We just seem to be doing Star Wars. And I think it's a good way to wrap it up. It's like, don't just do dinosaurs.
Yeah.
It's gotta be something. Everyone can do dinosaurs. It was not even the best dinosaur movie of the year. It wasn't even the best monster movie of the year. Not even close.
Yeah. Well, we have a new segment that actually hasn't, come out for people who listen to the regular episodes because of the way we
Very exciting.
record these. But this episode is coming out on December 13th, which means just getting started. Morgan Freeman, Tommy Lee Jones, and Rene Russo has just come out. Can you tell me your spoiler review of that movie? I've been very excited for this because I, like the American public, have been clamoring. I've been writing letters, put Rene Russo back in movies. And so finally, Rene Russo is back on the big screen in her biggest role, where everyone is reprising their sort of stereotypical roles. Rene Russo just playing that Rene Russo part that we all love so much. And Morgan Freeman reprising his role as God, and Tommy Lee Jones reprising his role as an FBI agent who arrests God. That's right. Just Getting Started is a movie in which Tommy Lee Jones indicts Morgan Freeman as God. And it's sort of like Miracle on 34th Street. And in the end, it turns out Tommy Lee Jones was Santa Claus and Rene Russo is also Santa Claus in sort of, and what happens is, if you've ever seen Doctor Who, sort of Rene Russo is becoming the new Santa Claus, and Tim Allen at one point makes a small cameo. I don't want to ruin it for people. Yeah, he's unlisted, which is crazy.
Yeah, this is a sort of Prometheus to Aliens kind of prequel to the Santa Claus.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so that's this movie.
Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this movie?
10, like I give to every single one of the Santa Claus movies, which is a real fact about me. or to Jurassic World.
To Just Getting Started. Yeah.
10, cause seriously, the Santa Claus, 1, 2, and 3, best movies in the world.
Ooh,
I love them.
That's surprising.
Go back and watch them. They're really great.
The first one I remember liking. I don't remember if I saw the other two.
Oh, they're amazing. The makeup alone on Martin Short into the Santa Claus 3 is a cinematic classic. I'm serious. Huh. He's a brilliant interpretation of the Christmas Tale.
Maybe
not really the Christmas Tale. Sorry.
Yeah.
Incredibly offensive to the idea of Christmas, but the Christmas movie tale. It's
what Christmas has become.
Yeah, the Christmas movie thing. You know what I mean? It is the height of that. If you want to, continuing the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer kind of zeitgeist, his look in that is absolutely beautiful. It really is.
So Jurassic World comes on TV. What are you gonna do?
I will keep it on to laugh. But there's no way. If someone started talking, I would not even like lower the television. I would turn it off. If I knew it meant they were getting I'd turn it off. Honestly, I would.
Yeah.
I think I'd turn it off.
Yeah,
I'd go that far.
I would probably turn it off and go outside. I'd be so upset with, just the memory of this movie.
Which is tough because I was going to say like I'd leave it on. No, I really would turn it off. I really would change it. It's really that bad.
It's really not good. I would not if you haven't seen this and you enjoy the first one, don't ruin it.
Don't see it.
Cause
it's not even like that thing where it's like, yeah, we'll just see it to see it. It's really a waste of time. It's a very long movie too. Same with Star Wars.
Long. It's over 2 hours.
It's a very long. Yeah, guys, just stop it. Just let me be in there for an hour and a half. If your movie is as long as Lawrence of Arabia, it better have as many story points as Lawrence of Arabia. It can't just be there are dinosaurs loose. Now there are not dinosaurs loose. Oh no, there are dinosaurs loose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad. There's no redemption. How can people find you, Mike?
Let's Start a Cult podcast. Check it out. And we now have a segment where you can hear Alan contributing on that show where we do our hot takes. And if you're good enough, if you're as funny as Alan to contribute, hit us up. Find Let's Start a Cult podcast. We give you the information at the end of our segment of We Didn't Take a Survey. It's pretty funny stuff. Let's Start a Cult podcast. And we now have Soundbite, Soudbyte. We just got picked up for another year.
Oh,
for
nice.
Another 12 seasons of that 14-second stuff. So you can find me there. Yeah, it's really great stuff is happening.
Cool. And you can find us at Icing That Pod on Twitter. And then if you go over to Patreon, for $1, you can help decide who is going to be punished for December, me or Taylor. You won't have to be a part of that, Mike. But
yeah, I miss Taylor again. I'm like I've said this before. I'm the bringer of death. I always get the weeks where the co-host isn't there. I really do. I always listen, and then I'm so excited, and I have all these things to say to the co-host, and then the person's like, "Yeah, they're not going to be here." It's like,
it's more of a favor for you, honestly. He's pretty bad.
Yeah, as revealed on an episode that'll be out when this episode comes out. You said you would trade with me because I complained about my co-host.
Yeah, I'm up for it. We'll sign the papers.
I'm totally up for it. I would totally do a co-host trade. It would be so much fun. I want to do like a month of it and get everybody to trade. Like all those podcasts we mentioned, it would be so much fun to just do like all right, everybody shift to your left for a month. It would be great.